Welcome to Constructive, a podcast about construction, technology, and whatever else comes up. Hope you enjoy. Welcome back, everybody. Today I have Felipe Engineer-Manriquez, and I'll just do a quick intro for you, but I want you to get into your background a little bit. He's currently the Director of Project Delivery Services at the Boldt company. I know you're an author. You basically wrote the book on construction Scrum, and a podcaster as well, the EBFC Show I discovered recently. But yeah, give me like whatever length version of your background you're willing.
Yeah, so my last name is Engineer, and by coincidence, I studied electrical engineering, got my degree in that, and went into project management construction right away, right out of school. I got to do a co-op on the school I was going to, University of Illinois, Chicago, and worked on a 12-story research building with the BSL-3 lab, which is like the lab that can study SARS and viruses of that type. So I got to be part of that for several years. Worked for several large general contractors. Eventually got my master's in business. I've been an entrepreneur. I got bit by the entrepreneurship bug probably, 15 or almost 20 years ago. So it was like halfway. At one point, I felt like it was halfway through my career, but it wasn't. It's like the first spring of my career. And so I've run several businesses, currently run a couple of businesses, including the podcast and the training consulting business to help people learn how to do Scrum at scale in big ways inside of their projects and with their teams. And I do that year round in addition to my W-2 job. So like as a director at a large general contractor, I've got all the responsibilities of that. And my focus is primarily on lean project delivery, integrated lean project delivery to be specific at the Boldt company. So focusing on IPD projects with shared risk and reward, and then helping to spread and stabilize lean construction practices across our portfolio of projects. And I even have like my own branded clothes. So just adjusting the camera down for people just listening. I've got respect for people right on my heart. And below that, continuously improve below, because it is second to respect for people. Respect for people's first. And so I do all those things. I get to play on projects from, a couple of tens of thousands of dollars to currently I'm on a $3 billion project in San Francisco with what I consider friends who have been in this space for a long time, friends that we go back like 15, 12 years that we've been in the space of lean construction practices. And now we're getting to hone and refine our practice on a very big project with more than 500 people. And we're still like 90% in the design phase. We're just starting to transition to construction. So just imagine the scale of that for all you listening. Like the team is 500 people, includes construction as well, but it's mostly design. Like by percentage, it's just so much to design. 17-story high rise with some subterranean levels in the heart of San Francisco. If you've been following me on social media, I've been posting some pictures from the big room and bragging about the team on that project. It's cool stuff to see. But stuff like you said, I love Scrum. I got into Scrum right the year before my son was born. So he's 14, so 15 years ago. That's how it's like such an easy way. Maybe it was just a little after. It was after, but it's around the time of his birth. Like, let's just go with that. So like my timing is not totally right. So I had to write it down, put it in a book so I don't forget. It's written down, so now I don't have to remember it. Them's the rules. And fast forward, I taught my son Scrum when I learned it first, when he was about 4. And then he recently, this September, he just published his book, Scrum for Teens, which is to help teenagers with Scrum. And a friend of ours even recorded a little video about his experiences with me and what he's learned and how he's applied it himself with his friends and at school. And so people can go to scrumforteens.com and check out that video on my son's website and see his book, which is a beautiful book. And we're a little competitive in our family, Seth, and my son's book has outsold mine in its opening debut. So I told him, I was like, I'm just going to have to write another book and let the fun competition continue. But it's friendly competition. It's not like to put one down. We're definitely elevating each other, and we have a great time. Mom is very proud as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I get to play in construction spaces, and I even work on project delivery. So like if a job is not optimally performing as it should, I can get involved and help teams get it back on the path to recovery with about a $0 spend. And like the way that we achieve it is by focusing on processes, again, putting respect for people higher, and then doing some process changes. And we've been, cutting months and months off of schedules. I even had one case example. I worked with an owner, and they were in business case time. We took a year off of a 5-year project for them in 2 hours. 2 hours of doing some targeted work together and changing some key processes, respecting the processes that they have, but making some really minor tweaks. And the owner said that little change for them was worth more than $350 million saved. So, and now that I'm on this $1 billion project, one of my other friends, James, says I should reintroduce myself as the $1 billion man because I have $1 billion impact. I like the sound of it. It sounds funny. I'm still getting used to it, Seth. If you can hear, I'm still playing with it. So James, if you're listening, I'm practicing it. I got to practice a little more. But that's a little bit about me. I love to read. I don't watch TV. Like I read a lot. I commute quite a bit, so I would consume a ton of podcasts and audiobooks and videos. And like today, I'm in Kuala Lumpur. Just got wrapped up a Scrum conference in Southeast Asia with people from as far away as Japan, Germany, Thailand. So we had, and Singapore. So people from, the surrounding areas, and then really far away too. It's been really amazing to see this community of change makers come together in these different areas. And I was honored to be among the keynote speakers and got to MC the beginning of the show with some cool co-hosts. Had a blast. I did a lot of touristy things. I'll be posting stuff on LinkedIn, sharing some of the things that I learned while I was out here so other people could benefit and think about, really think hard before you sign up for a 16-hour flight. Because you got to mentally prepare yourself for being off the game board for essentially 2 work days. It's 16 hours straight.
It gives you plenty of time to listen to podcasts like you're talking about, if that's what you want. But that's awesome. You give me a ton of things now I want to dig into a little bit. But I want to come back to IPD because that's something I didn't write down. So don't let me forget. I want to come back to integrated project delivery systems. But Scrum, just because that's really the biggest reason I asked you on. I'm a little new to the term. I mean, I've heard it a lot, but I've never actually dug into how to use it and stuff. And you said you were explaining it to your 4-year-old, and I saw that post, and I have a 14-month-old, and I'm like, ooh, I got to start thinking about what I'm going to teach my son when he's 4. How do you, so this is like a pretty cool thing that can be implemented on a really complex construction project. You can also teach it to a kid and have them apply it to their life. Can you do like that shorter version of how do you explain this to a 4-year-old and how does it work?
So the best way to get, and you got to understand like what you're trying to do. If you're going to do Scrum with somebody to just achieve a result, you don't have to teach them anything. And that's what my son and I, we call Ninja Scrum. We're like, you're using the framework, and like, it seems from the other people's perspective, magically everything just falls into place and works. So that's what it looks like to the outsiders. And now like you as the Scrum master, who's like the captain of what's going on, the leader, if you want to teach what's happening, and I've offered this to teams all the time. I tell every team I work with, I said, just so you know, I will be using Scrum the entire time that we're working together. If you want to learn what it is, ask me and I'll call things out as they happen. And Seth, most people don't give a damn. They don't ask like, how is this working? Like, why is this working? They're so used to like just doing the work that they don't look at what is the process of getting the work done, which Scrum is really great. So from a big picture perspective, if I paint pictures, let me just start with Scrum is not an acronym. It's named from a research paper that Dr. Jeff Sutherland, the founder and creator of Scrum, was reading a Harvard Business Review article by 2 researchers in Japan, Nanaka and Takeuchi, who we now lovingly call the grandfathers of Scrum, because they were looking at companies that were outliers, that were high-performing companies, and they found that even though the very best companies, only some, like very small percentage, everybody in the company was aligned in working in one direction, from the janitor to the CEO to the board of directors and everybody in between. Like everybody was like aligned, and they knew what the purpose of the company was. They knew where the direction they were going, and they knew how they connected to that greater purpose. And I'm making like a little triangle shape, like is a push forward, because the researcher said like they've never seen this in nature in human organizations except for in a game, and a game of rugby. So in rugby, when the ball gets put back into play, the teams like kind of like physically come into contact in opposing directions, and they roll this like overinflated Tom Brady happy football into the middle, and then the whole team with possession of the ball tries to do one thing: score a point. It's all their mind is on: score a point. And there's like tactics and strategies for how to score, but they're all of one mindset to score a point when that ball goes into play. And so that's what the researcher said, that some of these companies had that. And when Jeff had been playing with this back in he's a West Point cadet, he was a fighter pilot and flew combat missions. He was honing this process of like how to organize people. He read that article and he said, this is it. I'm naming my process, my framework, Scrum, because this describes exactly what's happening. Now, the other cool thing is, Seth, everybody who's listening to the show is experiencing Scrum right now, and they just don't even know that it's happening. So the way that it's happening, Jeff modeled how to organize human teams based on how cells in your body work and communicate together. And so that's why it's like such a awesome framework, and it's so natural to play in this way. Now, I say that it's natural. Most corporations, most education systems in the United States and abroad don't teach organizing in this biologically friendly way. They have these like traditions and other hierarchies that don't necessarily serve getting things done, which is kind of crazy. Like there's a lot of companies, and people in the construction audience know, like a lot of projects, it almost feels like nobody actually cares about finishing on time and finishing on budget. It seems that way, even though we all say, like the owner tells you that, you know, getting my building at a certain date and for a certain price is super important, but then we don't behave to align with those two things that people say are important. And so with Scrum, it's like, once you say what it is, it's just like your body. Like, I don't have to think about what my kidneys are doing for them to be part of my team, for the Felipe team body to help me process, you know, waste out of my system. And if I'm healthy, I don't even notice my kidneys. I don't even feel that I have kidneys. And most people listening, unless you've had a kidney stone, you don't even know where your kidneys are. I know where mine is because I had a kidney stone once. You know, don't get dehydrated, people. Drink your water, but not too much. And so, like, that's what happens in the Scrum team. My son has had he's reported the same experience, and we've talked to other trainers as well. And when you do it well, nobody even notices the process. Like the process becomes invisible and things just happen. People communicate and collaborate more. So if you want to think in like really short, simplistic ways, it's a delivery system and it's a great decision-making system. It allows information to flow, and it also increases transparency so that people can do the right things at the right time at a sustainable pace. And so like the real definition, it's in the Scrum guide. I mean, just go to people, tab my bio link and take my free class. If you want to get started with Scrum and experience with myself and with millions of people around the world are experiencing, I've got a free 30-minute class on my website that'll get you doing Scrum today when you take the class. It's only 30 minutes long. And in there, I give the longer definition from the book. And Jeff Sutherland said, like, this is so important to me. I want to keep Scrum free forever. So he made it public domain. And so the framework you can read, scrumguides.org, and you can read it in over 30 different languages and see what it says. So, and I give that link in my free course as well. And now in construction, we have some very unique language. Like construction people have jargon, and there's things, and even in different parts of the United States, like people in Miami don't talk like people in Jackson, Florida. Like it's the same state, but the jargon's a little bit unique. But a construction person in Portland can go to either one of those, Jackson or Miami, and still communicate at a high level because the construction jargon kind of cascades across. So I took the Scrum guide and made it a podcast episode where I gave commentary for construction on my podcast. So the EBFC Show.com. and you can just type in chapter 9 in the search box, and then you'll get access to my recording. You can watch it on YouTube or listen to it on Spotify or wherever you consume your podcasts, and listen to 50 minutes of me narrating what Scrum is for construction people, which I think is really helpful for a lot of people to see, because Scrum, to go back to a little expanded definition, there's 3 roles. There's a product owner, a Scrum master, and the team member, the development team. And there's 5 meetings that team has, and it all happens in a cycle of time we call the sprint. And before all of that even comes together, there has got to be a reason why the team comes together, and we call that the Scrum goal. So we use that goal in lean speech, like we would in an integrated project delivery. We have this concept of conditions of satisfaction, which are what are the individual things that you or your companies need so that at the end of this project, you will be completely satisfied. And then we scale that satisfaction down fractally to the micro level. So like if I'm doing something that a piece of work that I'm going to give to you, like let's say I'm doing rebar and you're going to pour concrete and I'm a different company, what do you need so that you can pour your concrete? You'd probably tell me something like blow all the debris out so that it's clear and ready so that your inspector will be happy, right? And that's typically the responsibility, depending on what jurisdiction you are, it's the responsibility of the rebar people because they cut and made all the garbage with the tie wire and the twists and all that stuff. So like we got to clean up our space, and then you get a good handoff. So there's the fractally small condition of satisfaction. Now, like we go up to the big, as the concrete company, you might need to bring back a certain profit to your company so you can keep doing more concrete work in the future. Like you've got to be profitable or you can't play in the game. Got to keep the lights on. So that's like, or you might have, maybe you had a bad experience on a past project where a rebar contractor did you wrong, and you might have something very specific about scheduling with contractors. So one of your conditions of satisfaction could be something specific to inner working with another trade. And we create those spaces for people. And in Scrum, we bring all those things together and make a unified goal. And the responsibility of doing that goal setting is the product owner. The product owner is responsible for what the team actually delivers. And in construction, those are played by different people in the space. And then the Scrum Master is like that servant leader that helps to know what the process is and then make it as seamless and as frictionless as possible so that the people can focus on working and not this process thing. And so like there's many entries in, but I always recommend people the same boring recommendation. So if you've watched me on anything recently, I've said this a million times, and here's a million times plus one. You start with doing Scrum yourself. Start yourself, get your own house clean before you criticize your neighbor's dirty house. That's what we always say. So yeah, I use the process myself. The whole trip I've been here, I've used Scrum every single day. I use it to do my presentation, my preparation, even some of the things, the sightseeing I've done. So I've been in a really good state of flow for 10 days, and I'm ready to go home and put this trip in the done column. What do you think, Seth? Is it good?
It sounds good to me. Yeah, one of the things I've liked about Scrum, just digging into it a little bit, is that the way that you're breaking down work into smaller pieces and kind of tackling it one step at a time. And one of the things that I just thought about as I was seeing this stuff is you break it down into to do, doing, and done categories. And I just tend to see this up on a board, a Scrum board, and with sticky notes on it. And I wonder, my question might sidetrack us away from Scrum a little bit, but don't you think there will always be a use in that physical, like write it down on a sticky note, put it on a board? Like, do you think it'd be even a bad thing if this all went into some software program where your Scrum board was completely digital? Or do you have thoughts about it?
Oh, I've worked with teams, and I get this question a lot about, should we go digital? And I always tell people the first thing you want to do is like understand the process. So do it analog, even if it's just one time. Even if you just Scrum your initial board with paper and a whiteboard one time digitally. I'm going to tell you why. Most people, it's not true of everyone, but most people, you don't have to teach them how to write. So they can know how to write. But with all software, you have to onboard them into the software. And then a lot of people this is just a natural human condition here, Seth. This is psychology here. If you're teaching somebody a new process and you introduce software at the same time, they will associate incorrectly the process you're teaching them with the software, and they'll think they're one and the same. It's just like people that do scheduling and project controls and construction sites. They associate like something like an Oracle Primavera solution, or I'm going to shout out to my friends at Planera, who's a competitor of P6. There are other alternatives. Like there's a way to Gantt chart plan a schedule with the critical path method, which I don't advise is your only way in, because there's other things you need to be using in addition to that. So don't get hung up on it's got to be this one tool. And like today, the marketplace too, there are probably more than 60 different software solutions for digital Scrum boards. Just like there's dozens of solutions now for CPM scheduling. And I just tell people like paper one time, so you can feel the process. And even in pull planning, if you don't start with the tangible notes and people together, then you don't see and hear and experience what a conversation, a negotiation, and a handoff looks like. Because in the software, it's almost always silent. I've watched teams, like 2 teams within a month, one team go paper and they stay paper the whole time, and another team start, because the people on the team had experience pull planning, they started with a new team digital. And if you went to both of their rooms and meetings, you'd see one team is like buzzing, like with noise and chatter and conversation and negotiation, and the other team sounds and looks like a library. You have a bunch of people heads down in iPads, typing and making notes. And if you don't bring in more structure, when you go digital, you actually have to bring in more structure, not less, because things are happening in parallel and it's invisible. You can't see it. So you have to bring more structure, more rules to a digital implementation. So I recommend people like do it with paper once so you can hear, feel, and see and experience. And then when you go, if you want to go digital, which you can definitely do, there's reasons to go digital too, especially if you're on very big jobs. You'll know to listen and be aware and mindful of those experiences. And if you don't see, hear, and experience the same things you did with the paper, then you've got to change your facilitated process to allow that to happen. Because the magic, I always tell people like, and I just packed my sticky notes away, but I had some on the table with me. The magic of the sticky note is that it gives us the framework and boundary conditions to have the right conversation with people and to put a piece of work into a small 3-inch by 3-inch bite-sized chunk of information. So it makes a lot of sense. And to the people doing the work, I always tell people that have never experienced pull planning, like when I explain to you what a negotiation between 2 trade partners or 2 designers looks like, it takes me longer to explain it than for you to witness it in seconds. So I like to bring new people to pull planning meetings and then just tell them like, with your permission, can I nudge you when something cool happens? And I'll whisper and call out like, that's a negotiation, or that's somebody refusing to do work, or like, which is not okay. Like in the everyday construction, like what I just said, like, let's put some focus on that stuff, because can people say no to work assigned? On the 9 out of 10 construction projects, superintendent or the design lead says, these are the dates we're going to hit. And they don't even ask people if it's achievable. They just say like, these are the dates we're going to hit. And then they just march off the cliff like lemmings and miss the dates. And then the project just gets delayed, versus the alternative is like, here's what we need to get to satisfy the contract, the client, our condition satisfaction that we all agreed to as a team. We have agreement. And now we're going to talk about negotiating our way, creating a sequence of activities to get us there. And when we do that, we always see at least 20% improvements in schedule duration, schedules getting shorter. And we've had some teams experience like twice the amount of work done in half the time allotted based on what the critical path method schedule allocates. These are the types of results you get. So with Scrum and pull planning, you get much more work done at a much higher quality level with a way more respectful engagement with the people. That's one of the super valuable reasons to use it. And I love working with teams that are in trouble, quote unquote, in trouble, because they're more receptive to trying and experimenting with things, because like everything they've been doing doesn't work. And everything they've been doing is overtime. Even if it's targeted, almost always never works. So it's like, you got to, it was bad processes that got you there, not bad people. Bad processes got you to where you are now, and you've got to change the process, but that takes courage. Courage is even one of the Scrum values, Seth, that you probably saw in your research. It takes courage to do something different and something new. So people, if you're on a job that's suboptimal, I had a random guy from LinkedIn, Seth, jumped on a post that I made, took my free 30-minute course, and then he was living in a delay, and I'm forgetting the guy's name, but I put there's a blog story about it in the EBFCshow.com/blogs, I think is what it is, but people just go to the main site and just click on the blog tab. And in that example, he was looking at like almost a 90-day delay, and he improved it by over 60 days just by utilizing Scrum to handle that delay part. And I asked his permission, and I repackaged it up as a blog post because he'd posted publicly, and even showed he had sticky notes that were like little tears of paper. So like he didn't even have like legit 3x3 3M stickies, right? He just had he had some free equipment rental company posted pad that every construction project team gets. Like everybody gets like free, swag from the rental companies. He tore off some little sheets and made like a little baby Scrum board using a ballpoint pen and teared up paper, and they improved their process so that they closed the gap by over 60 days. I mean, it was crazy good. And that's the power of it, Seth. Like it's super simple. Like when I explain it to people, it's like some people watch the video that's 5 minutes that explains it for construction folks, Seth, and I get like 3 typical reactions. One, people will say, that video is too fast. Okay, so for people that have that reaction, that means that almost everything you saw in the video is brand new. It's brand new to you. You've never seen it before. So my advice to you is congratulations, you're learning, and it feels uncomfortable. That's where you want to be. That's the beginner's mindset. That's good. Like that happens to me too when I learn new concepts. So watch the video again, slow it down. There's a transcript of the video too. You can read it and then do what it actually says. Like try to do it. Try to do some of those parts and pieces. Take the free class. The free class slows it down a little more and gives you some step-by-step guidance. Then another type of person watches the video and says, I'm already doing that. Now that person has like branded themselves as an expert. And then my response to them is always like, if you're doing that, show me. Let me see it. And then, there's never a response to that, which means they think they're doing Scrum. And people say this all the time, like the same thing happens with lean construction techniques. People are like, oh, I've been doing pull planning forever, but they're on a project right now 7 months behind schedule. Well, it's like, well, pull planning, if you pull plan, your project actually finishes faster with less resources. So maybe you're not pull planning effectively. So be careful of having that mindset of thinking you're an expert. Like, even though I've taught Scrum to thousands of people, and they're probably getting close to 1 million people now and trained hundreds of Scrum Masters, I still always approach things with a learner's mindset so I could keep learning. And then there's other people that watch the video and they're like, doesn't apply to me. And if you think you can't use it, then it's not for you. Keep scrolling. Those are the 3 main, and then there is the people that watch it and they're like, this is exactly what I needed. So we get those as well. Yeah.
Yeah, man, you touched on so many things. One of the things I feel like you're digging into that is, and I'll give a little bit of my background, even though I've shared some of this on the podcast before, but I started out my career after studying construction management and got kind of pushed in the deep end of the litigation world and was working for construction management firms that were assisting in forensic efforts on construction projects that had failed. At first, it was mostly about schedule delays. I also got into like actual building envelope failures and moisture problems. And so I have seen how construction projects can fail quite a bit and how horribly that can go and how adversarial it gets. And sometimes I just think one of the things you were mentioning that I've been hoping, and now I'm in the construction management world, which is more as an owner's representative. So I'm seeing things. I've been on the specialty contractor trade partner side. I've been in the GC world and in the litigation world. And now I'm kind of helping owners think about construction projects from maybe a little higher level. I'm still pretty low on the totem pole, but one of the things that I have as a goal is educating owners about this stuff, because they they probably know very little. Maybe Scrum does apply to their job outside of construction, but they're more focused on just, like you've said, get me that building so I can start making a profit. And I feel like if concepts like these were implemented across the board, I bet that project you were describing that realized a huge gain on their delay, I bet it wasn't, like you mentioned, because they added more people and got more overtime going. And I think there are some counterintuitive things like that that we'll notice as we're kind of learning the process of how we do this stuff. But how do we get it? Because sometimes in my job, I feel like I don't have the levers to pull. I feel like I either need to get something new written into the contract that already exists and the contractor didn't read anyway, or I need to empower a general contractor to look into Scrum or something like that. But how do we help people want to get educated on this kind of stuff?
Yeah, so you got to solve a problem. So if you solve a problem for people or you reduce a pain point, that's your entry door in. That's the way in. So with most people that I work with and teach, they usually come to my courses or engage me for consulting because they're experiencing significant pain, and they know that I can remove that pain with them. Like, they're going to do it. All right, we're going to unlock some things like you said, like it's counterintuitive. Adding more people to a project that's already late has actually shown, there's so many studies on this. Like if you're in an overtime situation for more than 2 weeks, you suffer massive productivity losses. Excuse me, you suffer massive productivity losses and your profitability goes down. And even on change order work, like for acceleration, like the client never gets dollar for dollar back for what they spend because of the nature of how people come together in the space to do that type of work. There are limitations of space and time and number of bodies that can be doing something or engaged in something. There's some things, sometimes you can get into parallel, but we're getting like too into the nerdy weeds on project recovery. But I think, for clients listening, it's like I said at the beginning, and now the million and second time I say it, you got to start with yourself. So I've had owners, reps come through my trainings, and the light bulb goes off and they start to recognize like how sub-optimized so many processes are in the traditional construction. And every contract, so I'm just going to answer the contract piece of it. Every contract has an amazing C word clause inside of it, and it's usually a clause on coordination. So even traditional contracts have coordination sections and areas, and inside of that coordination, you have so much freedom that we call means and methods to do these things better. Because people have asked me, like, I want to write in like pull planning into my front ends, and I want to put it in the contract to make people do it. So that's like what the project managers and the directors say, and I tell them, like, that's not going to work. And with all the experience I've had, I have experienced teams that have it in the contract, but nobody on the team actually knows how to deploy those things. And so people ignore it and they don't do it, even though it's in the contract. So I've been on teams where like we're recovering the job and people are like, we need some lean thing. And then we look at the contract and they should have been doing pull planning since day one, and they just didn't. And the reason most people don't do it is because they don't know how to do it. And in the construction space, Seth, like, you never hear that phrase in construction meetings. I don't know. Like, I don't know is not acceptable in most sites. I'm working with a team now, and we're training the executives on the team to use that phrase if they don't know something. We've made it socially acceptable to say, I don't know, but they got to get their homework done and come back with something within a business day. So, because, if we're asking them something and they don't know, it's okay, but you only get a day not to know. You got 24 hours to go find out. But that's a change. That's a change in the industry that we don't have. So learn the concepts yourselves. Like, one of the San Francisco Power reached out to me this year, and they do with the airport, like, multiple billions of dollars of work every year in construction. And they're all quote unquote owner side project management. And they said they identified in their portfolio that they have some major discrepancies and gaps with projects finishing on time. Like, it's a big problem for them. So the pain they're experiencing is projects are late, and it's tax dollar projects. So, they can't always go back to the tax base and say, give us more money, because there'll be a mutiny. People don't want to pay more taxes, so they have to be better stewards of the projects and the funds that they have. And so it's been traditional methods have been failing them. Statistically, if you're on a traditional delivery, you have only a 25% chance by just study and survey to make it on time. That's 1 out of 4. You have a 3 out of 4 chance to fail and to be late. 3 out of 4. That's like, it's guaranteed you're going to be late almost, So they've actually called us in partnership with the Lean Construction Institute, Northern California Community of Practice, where I volunteer as a chair for that group. We're going to go and teach them hands-on pull planning so they can experience it. And we told them, like, you're not going to learn how to facilitate it going through, but you'll go through a complete cycle of what last planner system production controls is. And then you'll be able to better ask your contractors, like, this is what we want. And you'll know, like, should you deploy it? Sometimes some contractors are so sophisticated with their planning and scheduling, they're very close to a good last plan implementation, and they get okay results. But that's not most contractors, and especially public hard bid contractors don't operate that way. So owners get educated first, and even our friends at LCI and the Lean Construction blog, which are 2 separate entities, they push a lot of content for free. And the Lean Construction blog in particular, one of the editors, Juan Doe, a good friend of mine, he says if any owner contacts him for a webinar or a training or anything that they offer, they give it to the owners for free, because they know that it's going to cascade to contractors, trade partners, and designers. So for owners, there's no excuse. The information is available. There are people with high quality training and modules that are given to owners for free, because we know it's going to improve the industry and stop the work from being so soul crushing, Seth. Because like I was on a 10-year litigation, and I got to work with a lot of forensic schedulers. And that's why I really got nerdy on a critical path method scheduling, when I was getting cross-examined by 6 different professional forensic schedulers. You really learn a lot that most people will never ever learn, because there's no reason to. But when you're getting cross-examined by 25 different lawyers, you pick up on where the mistakes happened, and it's not trivial, but people take for granted. Like,
yeah,
the interaction with people.
Do you have an opinion like me? I just think awarding projects to the lowest bidder is one of the biggest errors we make. And I know it's a complicated thing, especially when government money, taxpayer money is involved. I understand why it's sometimes a legal requirement to do that, but don't you think that would be part of the solution if owners could allow themselves to not just pick the cheapest contractor?
Yeah. And I work with some private clients. Like right now we're working with a public client, University of California, San Francisco Health System. They actually changed the laws with the regents so that they could do integrated project delivery contracts, because they had some key people inside, like my friend James, and they did an experiment with a pilot, looked at what it could mean, and just looked at their rules, like, can they do it? And they did. So they changed the code, and that had some good cascading effects for others. And in a lot of other areas, like work with another private client, a healthcare system I can't name, that operates in 8 different states. And they wanted to do like IPD, integrated project delivery, as well. And their legal team was like, no, you can't do it. And it was just like a no. And I told them, I was like, how did you ask? And they're like, well, we just told them we want to do it. I was like, well, your lawyers aren't trained in this method. Like, integrated project delivery represents less than 5% of all contracts delivered in the United States. It was started, arguably here. There's been some really good case studies early in Europe. There's different government entities have adopted parts of it in numerous different countries. And it's actually like really popular in Canada for most public construction projects, like schools and firehouses and police stations, because they actually legislated and changed the laws to go to that procurement system, because they get more scope for less dollars using that methodology. But that was after like a tremendous amount of education, because you're not going to, like, you study construction management, like in all the years of construction management, They might mention IPD like one day in one class, one paragraph worth of information, and that's it. Because the teachers don't keep up with the changes in the market. Like IPD is more than 20 years old. But you and I could survey your listeners, and very few people would like have ever worked on an IPD job. Like statistically, it's not likely that they've even worked on one, right? Let alone two, back to back.
Some people might not even know what a project delivery system is. You're probably working on a design, bid, build project that's like, and when I was at Cal Poly learning construction management, they did stress design build as well. At the time, they were talking a lot about CM at risk and CM agency, but obviously design, bid, build is kind of what I've probably seen the most. I've never been on an IPD project. I'm super curious. I know some of what is involved there, but can you do the high level? I'd love to hear it from your words. What makes IPD different?
So what IPD is different. So let's start with the traditional so we get the contrast. In traditional projects, you have the owner engages a design team to either do some programmatic or full-on design to create a set of construction documents that are permitted or at least permittable. And then after those documents are made, so it's an owner and a designer first, then when that's done and permitted or about to be permitted, they hire by a process of looking at qualifications and getting the lowest qualified number, a general contractor. And then that general contractor comes with trades to build what all those pictures and specs say that is the job. That's traditional design, then bid, then build last. And so that's the typical. Design build is different in that the owner will hire a GC designer partner together. They usually form like a joint venture and create a partnership entity to work together. And there's DBIA, Design Build Institute of America, has prescriptive recommendations for designer-led, owner-led, like I don't think owner-led's even one, designer-led or general contractor-led partnership. So sometimes the GC is like in charge and running as prime, and the designer works for them. And then sometimes the designer's in charge and the GC works for them. It kind of depends on the people that you have in those two entities. And then they work with the client together with contractor involvement early. And there's like different risk profiles. And typically we see those projects finish less expensive than design, bid, build. And the way you can't tell that there's a difference until the both projects complete. So to get apples to apples comparison, here's the things that you have in design, bid, build where no one understands like how they get more expensive. You have contingency, allowances, and just a slew of change orders. And you have to factor all those costs in. And even some clients with like really low quality documents will say, we're going to carry a 10 or 15% contingency because we have to buy the risk of like the miscoordination in the design documents. And a design build, there's a process and put into place so that all the design disciplines are coordinating as they're designing elements. So there should be relatively no clashes, almost no RFIs. If design build is done right, you should have a handful of change orders at most and a handful of requests for information at most. And then there's a thing called progressive design build, which I'm going to ignore for now. We're going to jump right to, that's a Design Build Institute of America term and contract type. It's a different contract type. But we'll focus on integrated project delivery. In integrated project delivery, it's like design build, except the prime party members, the general contractor and the designer, are sharing risk and reward. So they have to say at some point during the early phase, they have to lock down what's our profit and how much is it by volume of the contract. And then they put that into a separate profit pool. And so like, for example, if the architect makes a mistake, and before we might have some avenues of some smaller and the contingencies are usually really small, like less than 5%. If the architect makes a mistake that's like just blatant, it comes out of the profit. Guess who pays for that too? General contractor. And anyone else who's on the integrated form of agreement with shared risk and reward. So because we have that, we're incentivized, we're going to feel the pain together. Everybody protects everybody. And so we minimize those mistakes and people get really creative. The creativity skyrockets, and then the client usually sees significant reduction in cost because everybody's incentivized to work together and to look out for each other. In the typical design bid build, there's no incentive to work together. We're all separate. We're all looking out just for ourselves. Everybody is the enemy, and we're like at war. It's a very warrior style, like, and I think I think there's only one project in the history of IPD that ever went into litigation, one, versus every lawyer, talk to any lawyer in construction, like when they went to school, it was nothing but a steady diet of construction case study and litigation examples, because construction is constantly litigating, constantly. And so that's like the big picture, like shared risk and reward is the main difference. So it's design build plus shared risk and reward. So we behave a lot differently because, it's one party, one project, one team versus us versus you, or us versus the owner. Like even in design build, the two entities can always go against the owner. And so and people are like, that doesn't happen. Go to that project and listen to how people talk, especially when conflicts come up. And like, I'm on a big IPD project now, and the client said, thank God this is IPD. Even though we're challenged, everybody's still engaged and at the table, which is incredible. Like he said, like, if any other type of contract delivery method, we'd have lawyers sitting at the table with us today. And we don't. We're still resolving it all at our level because we're incentivized to help each other. And so it's a testament to the power of that contract.
It always seems like on design bid build projects, the longer a project goes on, the more everybody hates each other. It's just kind of the way things end up going. It deteriorates those relationships. Like, contractor keeps submitting RFIs that are annoying the architect because the architect thinks they're right, and the architect sends back a snarky response, and then the contractor's like, I'm turning this into a change order, and then the owner's like, we don't have room for that in the budget, and then it just constantly happens that way. But man, one of my first
bid build projects where I started using lean techniques, I told the architect, I said, listen, I'm not going to do this like the traditional contractor. So just tell me, his name was Brian. I was like, Brian, just tell me what you designed, just to prove to you, I'm going to be really kind. I'm going to be extra kind with whatever you personally designed. And he's like, no, I'm not going to tell you. He's like, I'm not going to tell you what I designed. He's like, he didn't trust me, but he did tell me. He said when he was in school, his architecture professors told him that the architects are the last line of defense to protect owners from getting robbed, stolen, taken advantage of by general contractors. Like, they learn in school, they're indoctrinated that all general contractors are thieves and all contractors steal. And they get that reinforced in school and then their training year after year after year. And then when you come into this design bid build contract, the contract puts you at war. One of my other friends said, Seth, like, in design bid build, a group of strangers come together, not as enemies. They do the project and they leave as hated enemies that despise each other after it's done. It was like, that sounds terrible. That sounds terrible. I'm not surprised that construction has a labor shortage. Like, most project delivery of that type, where you're leaving as enemy combatants, like, and hating each other, that's not a place you're going to work every day, like 10-hour days. Like, no one's going to sign up to go to war 10 hours a day for an entire career. Like, it sucks. And so these other methods are countermeasures. And even the CM, construction management, when it came out in the 1990s, was supposed to be the industry's answer to, fixing that problem of design bid build. And newsflash, everybody, it do a damn thing. Sorry, it had no effect. We still have the lowest productivity rates. Construction is the only industry in the United States that has had no productivity gains since the 1960s, where agriculture, retail, and manufacturing have all seen double-digit, quadruple-digit exponential improvements in productivity. And it's not because we don't have technology. We have lots of technology in construction, lots of software. We got augmented reality, virtual reality. We have AI in construction now, and we're still not seeing improvements in productivity because some of these processes are just so gosh darn broken that it prevents us from getting better results. So to use some of these alternative things like lean construction techniques and principles, or, putting respect above other things first when you're engaging with teams, and then like educating yourself, like learn people. Like, there are case studies for like every situation out there. All the information is there in the public domain. You just got to spend some time. And if you're working so much you don't have time to learn, then you're on the perfect project to pause and learn, because you can have drastic improvements. So if you're watching the show and listening to this podcast, you're thinking like, in the last 5 days, I haven't spent any time really actively learning anything. And listening to the show is a form of learning, but it's passive. You want to do something active. Active learning is like you're listening to the show and taking notes and then doing things different at your project tomorrow. That's active learning. But if you're just listening to the show and then you're off to the next one afterwards, then you're just being entertained. And you're welcome. So, Seth and I hope it's been very entertaining for you thus far.
100%. Yeah, or watch that 5-minute video. I am definitely going to link that in the comments, or read the book, the Scrum Construction book that Felipe wrote. And I've found too, having a physical book, even though I'm not a big reader, I mostly listen to books these days, but I've bought a couple construction books recently that I got the hard copy and I started highlighting for that exact reason you said. Is there's just something about that tactile, like, act of taking notes while you're also consuming, that creates learning. I don't think listening to podcasts, I think it helps. I fall asleep listening to podcasts all the time, and I still think even my dreams might be educating me a little bit. But I think true deep learning really needs to be a combination of like consuming the information, but then processing it out. Like, I have to rewrite it out. Just writing it back out helps me to learn something. But one of the things...
I'll pause you before you give me your next question. Like, you just tapped on something for the audience that, Seth has got. This is a genius spark moment right here. So we learned in training people in Scrum all these decades that you need pauses in between your learning so that your brain will process it when you're not actively involved. So like, let's say I teach you that concept on something on a Scrum board. Like, we build a Scrum board in 5 minutes. I have to leave you alone and like do or distract you or take a break so that it really sinks in. And so like in our professional Scrum training class, we run a 16-hour course. It's 8 hours one day and 8 hours the next. But we build in 10 to 15 minute breaks every hour, and then like a 2-hour lunch. And then I always tell people at the end of the first day, like, when you go home tonight, don't think about this. And I want to hear about your dreams tomorrow. And the reason I do that is because research shows that you process everything you learned in the day at night when you're sleeping. And that's when your brain actually unlocks things. And I've had students come back on the start of day 2. These are all construction professionals, like project managers, directors, and executives and superintendents. They come back on day 2 and they're like, you tricky guy. Like today I looked at these things. Yesterday I was like, this didn't make sense. Like, even just looking at how a Scrum board works. And they come back on Friday morning and they always say like something unlocked overnight. And now they can understand and they're seeing patterns and recognizing things. And even the quality of their questions and engagement increases on the second day. And the first day is like a mix of like some vocabulary acquisition to learn some of these new phrases that you don't get exposed to in everyday construction. So people, do what Seth says, write it down, pause, sleep on it, especially like really new concepts, and then take a look at your notes the next day. It's powerful. Like, they're even teaching that to my son in high school. He has to, as part of their normal workflow, they have to take notes before class, during class, and then review notes after class. So they have these 3 touch points with the concepts individually in their own way, as part of like, even before they take quizzes and get assessed. It's fascinating. Like, it's permeating the education system now, this concept of there's downtime where you're not actively learning, and then your brain processes it, and then it's integrating it into your way of thinking. So what was your question, son?
Well, I got a couple things, but one of the things, first of all, do you have a hard out? Because I'm going to probably keep going another 20 minutes. I hope you don't have to go.
Yeah, I've got, I could do like 15 and then I have to.
Okay. I'll try to keep it quick then.
My suitcase is at the door because my flight, it's an international flight and the airport's an hour away.
We can make it a little over 10 minutes left. But yeah, okay. 2 things. One is, I was just going to add to that. I've developed this idea that anytime I have a big deliverable due and I'm at about the 90-95% mark, I'm always like, okay, stop. I'm going to go for a walk and not bring any of my notes. Maybe listen to music, maybe let it be quiet, and maybe allow myself to think about it, but don't actively even think about it. Just go for a walk, be away for 15 minutes and see how I feel when I come back, because I've just found that can open up a whole new perspective for me. The thing I wanted to mention is just about people and helpfulness. And you were mentioning about how architects are trained to look at GCs in that way, like they're just thieves. And I think too, that makes sense to me about why the trade people act the way they do. I think if you tell someone long enough, you're a thief, you're trying to steal from the owner, sometimes they start just acting like that. And
Yeah.
that's sad, first of all. And second of all, those people are very skilled. I mean, it's called skilled trades for a reason. And I don't think people give the respect to those people, and they're the ones actually building it. I think designing is really important. We have to have architects, we have to have engineers, but then we also have to have people build it, and those are the ones building it. And that's the biggest reason I started this podcast, is to appreciate the people who are putting in that hard work to build the physical stuff that we like to dream about. And it just seems like you're there too. How do we help people appreciate those laborers? I think they're looked down upon, and I just want to bring that story. Do you have advice for me?
Oh, I got a story on this. So
Yeah.
This is true. So last night, my friend in San Francisco, who's an owner of a multi-billion-dollar capital construction group, and he said, I'm just calling. He's like, I know you're in Kuala Lumpur, but I just want to hear your voice and talk to you. He's like, I want to tell you a story. And we ended up talking for like an hour. But the reason he was calling was because he got some feedback inside the owner side, like a criticism of like, why do you spend so much time talking to the trades? Like, why do you go and talk to the people doing the work? You get so down into the weeds. You don't stay at in the executive circles. And his response to that person in his organization was that it's the only way I actually learn what's really happening. He said he started doing that like 20 years ago. Somebody gave him that advice, and he tried it, and it transformed his engagement with the team. And he's had like a slew of above average successful projects because he just listened and got to know the people that actually put it together. So he could understand, like, what do these people need so they can be successful? And as the owner, you exert a lot of influence. And a lot of owners don't even realize how much influence they have beyond just the contract. Like, an owner could literally come to a meeting and say, I want X. And there's almost like 100% chance that they're going to get it, even if it's not in the contract, just because they're saying it out loud. And so I always tell all the owners, like, exercise that authority with caution and respect, but do exercise it. Like, ask for stuff, get to know the trades. And so, like, when I started using Scrum, Seth, on my first design bid build project, one of the things that happened was that I suddenly had more than 6 hours a day free to just roam the site. And so I would do my things that I had to get done, my PM stuff, and usually within like 2 or 3 hours. And then I had the rest of the day to just go be in the site. And so I would do that. And what I did was I got to really know at a really high level, all the foremen of all the companies working on the site, not just the trades I was managing. I got to know all of them, because when you have 6 hours and you can't leave, because it would be too weird for the rest of my team, like if I wasn't there. But I was like, my work was done. I could have left, but I said, I'm in the site and I'm learning how things come together. The education I got was incredible. Like, I'll even tell you, like, here's something I never would have learned had I not been there. So Rob was a foreman, superintendent for a carpentry company, doing some really cool work. And Rob said, he's like, what the problem with general contract? This was like after we built some rapport and trust. And he's just like educating me, because he's at the end of his career. He's like, what the problem with general contractors are? I'm like, I'm sure you're going to tell me, Rob. What is it? He's like, what are we doing to you? He's like, general contractors spend so much time and energy telling us how many people we should have, where we should be. And he's like, they spend no time telling us what they actually need done. He's like, do you know that we're specialized in this type of carpentry? He's like, do you know that we've been doing this like since before you were in diapers? He's like, why don't you just tell me what you want, and then let us use our skills and creativity to get there? He's like, don't tell me. And I wasn't telling him like to man up, like to have more manpower. I wasn't telling him that. He was just venting of like the frustrations of 40 years in the business. And I thought, damn, even our superintendent was like, who's not a carpenter, who's not trained in that skill, was like making observations and comments to him just earlier that week that he should have more people in this area versus another. And I'm thinking like, when I'm looking at the schedule, like that area that he was trying to get more manpower in wasn't even critical. Like a lot of people just see open resource availability and they try to jam it in to look as busy as possible because they think jamming in and being busy gets projects built, and it doesn't. It's flow. So Rob was right. Hey, everyone listening, if you don't understand like how to communicate what you need done to your trades and your designers, get better at communicating first, and then listen, and then shut up and listen to them tell you how they're going to get there. Watch the creativity unfold. Like, this is what they do. This is what they do. Stand back in awe of what they come up with. And I find that those types of conversations usually lead into significant schedule improvements and quality improvements.
Good.
It's as easy as having a good conversation.
And a good conversation can be so enjoyable. I wish more of them existed on the construction site. I feel like so often conversations are just negative and adversarial. I mean, hey, I love going up to a laborer and having them teach me how they do something that I don't know how it's done. And sometimes it's not necessarily going to change the outcome of my particular job, but I learn something about that process from those people. I think approaching people with that just teachable attitude, like I want to learn something from everybody here, would vastly improve communication on a job site, because people always think that I'm going to tell them how to do, like you just said. I don't want to do that. I want to learn it, and I also want to enable the people to do what they're good at. But there are two other things I wanted to touch on, pick one or both, but the future of construction, so AI and stuff. I know you've been focused on it lately, but also kind of like career growth and career paths for young people. So I don't know. Do you want to try to get to both of those things in one go?
Let's do both. I think both. So there's going to be a difference. Like I've been using AI since it came out commercially, and my mentor Jeff has been involved in AI with in the United States government for over 30 years. So like he's basically said like what we have now with GPT-4 aught, like our military's had like 25, 30 years ago. So put that, hey, everybody listening and think that AI is a fad. Just imagine that. U.S. military's been using AI for 3 decades. It ain't going away. So the big, for younger people coming up, there's going to be a vast difference between people that know how to use AI to get their work done and those that don't. And if you're into those that don't, like you're going to diverge. I could take 2 entry-level people and start them on working. One of them uses AI, one of them doesn't. One of them is going to significantly get more than 5 times the work done or be able to learn, because you can use AI to teach you anything. I've even talked to AI. I did a podcast yesterday with my friend Dr. M. He has a show in India, and I talked to GPT about the topics, and I use AI like an extension of myself. I don't think of it like the robot. It's like it's only going to interact and reflect back to me how I'm engaging with it. So I actually talked to it very friendly. And then on the flight over here, I watched Ex Machina, which is like a horror movie by all accounts. So people there's some bad stuff that happens in that movie. I'm not going to spoil it, but be kind to your AI.
Yeah.
Is what I'm going to tell.
Yeah, I've been writing please and thank you in Chat GPT every time too, for that same reason. Sorry,
so yeah. like those engineers that can learn something. And I did this with Vanessa, is a project engineer I'm working with now, structural engineer by training, but she's working on general contractor now as a project engineer. And she wanted to learn about this method called choosing by advantages. It's a decision-making framework. And so I told her, let's use AI and do it together. I teach CBA, choosing by advantages, and I've used it personally and professionally. But it's like, let's open up AI and let's watch how we can learn this together. And me as the teacher, you as the student. And then the reason I'm showing you like behind the scenes, because the next time something comes up, or if you have another follow-on question, I want you to be able to get your answers even if I'm not there. So I'm teaching her how to talk to AI and then how to engage with it and get the answers. So we went through a thing, and she got so excited about what she learned. And I'm talking about, this was like 5 minutes, Seth. This wasn't like a 2-day, 3-day thing. It was like 5 minutes, and I had her do take me through a decision making. Like the decision she wanted to evaluate in this practice was, should I wear a jacket in San Francisco? Should I bring a jacket to San Francisco? It's almost like a yes or no question, but it was a great one because we could go through different factors and criteria to evaluate it. And what happened as a result of that 5 minutes together, learning and practicing, and then, I mean, it was like 15 minutes in total. There was some like AI stuff from discounting the time, like here's how to talk to it and prompt. But her manager came up to me that week and said, man, you did such a great job teaching Vanessa CBA. We were in a meeting and she was able to recognize where we were doing something wrong. And she helped us course correct. And he's like, you weren't there. We were in a meeting. We didn't invite you, so that's why you weren't there. This is, it's like a big team. He's like, but thank you for getting her skilled up. And I was like, there you go. That's an example. So like anything that you want to learn, you're like, oh, I want to learn more about IPD. Well, you can have a conversation with ChatGPT and you can go start at a high level and then go deeper and then you can even have it ask you questions to find out where your gaps in knowledge are. And then you can go deeper on your gaps. There is no excuse, people, not to significantly level yourself up. And so for people that are like, for career progression, there's no limit. It's really going to become more of a function of like, how fast can you learn and really take it in? And like, I'm going to tell like some of you young whippersnappers coming into the industry, I'm a 30-year veteran in the industry myself. Some things just take time and you've got to physically be in the experience. You can learn about like an IPD contract, but until you spend time in an IPD job doing the IPD work, it's not the same as reading about it. So you got to at least get your fundamentals down. And then from those fundamentals, increase your skills and gap. And like, if you've got, I'm going to just here, we'll give some cheat code to all the younger people listening to the show. If you're in a current position now, forget about promotion for a second. Just master your current position. I took this very seriously in every role that I had. And I think this is why I'm more valuable now than I was as when I was younger. This is your time to learn. This is your time, like in this position. Take your job, broad strokes, what your job is. Like if you got a job description or even your resume, plug it in, take your name out of it so you don't, protect your private information. Plug it into a GPT or Anthropic Claude chat. I like Anthropic. It's like friendlier for certain things. And you can do it for free. You just got to, sign up with your email. You get like a certain number of users. A lot of people have Copilot. If they're using Microsoft, their corporate IT probably turned on Copilot for them. So you can upload a document and chat with it. Now ask it, say like, I'm working in this position. I have these many years or months of experience. What do I need to do to become mastery level proficient? And then like, it's going to tell you like without bias, it's going to say like, oh, these are areas you need to get, like you might, as a young project engineer, you might not have any experience forecasting, financial forecasting or financials. So it might tell you like you need to improve your financial capabilities and skills, and then go find somebody on your current project that has those skills and engage them to learn what those things are. And what it's going to do, it's going to make you more well-rounded and master your position. And then before you know it, you'll get promoted because you've mastered your position. The more valuable you get, the faster you rise in the organization. And don't get so hung up on the timing. If you need more money, talk to GPT about how can you ask for a raise and have it coach you. I had a friend of mine who's like a very high level, an executive. This is an executive person, and told me that they used GPT to coach them as their boss to say no and reject their asks for a raise to make them become effectively persuasive to get the raise. And they got the raise that they wanted after a couple of days of coaching with the AI.
I only giggle because I've done exactly that in a number of different ways. Yeah. Amazing. Well, thanks, Felipe. I would love to do this again. I feel like I've now thought of at least another hour's worth of content that I want to have with you at some point. So, like I said, I'm going to link some stuff in the comments. So please go back and follow those links to the video, buy Felipe's book or listen to it, however you can get a hold of it. He has a bunch of stuff out there that's free to find. Do you want to name some websites or just look you up on LinkedIn?
So thefelipe.bio.link. So it's THEFELIPE period BIO period LINK. Thefelipe.bio.link has like a link tree of all of my stuff. You could go to constructionscrum.com. That's the word construction followed by the word scrum.com. And all of my socials are there as well as like free book resources on the website. It's available on Amazon and some other places. You get all the deets there, including the audio version. And if you want to check out my son's book, 14-year-old's usage of Scrum, go to Scrum for Teens with the Scrum spelled out, the word FOR, and then TEENS, teens spelled out, .com, and check out his book. You can see the table of contents and like what are the offerings there, including a video, his interview prior to the book release that friends of ours did for him. And he's in an active construction project. He's coincidentally in the video, he's in the site of a team that he helped me co-train and start using Scrum, which was phenomenal experience for both of us. And then on LinkedIn, just punch in Felipe Engineer-Manriquez. I'm the only one on LinkedIn with that long last name. So very easy to find. And the podcast is theebfcshow.com, THEEBFCSHOW.com. So all the places to find me. And my phone number is even publicly listed on my LinkedIn profile. People call. Seth called me, like just proof positive. I answer my phone if you call. It's true.
Beautiful. Thanks, Felipe.